Okay, so what we're going to do is we're just going to continue on with our model. So again, I was talking about modeling this from primitives, and I'm just going to continue with this. Let's just I'm just going to sort of look to block out the arm, and by and large this is the exact near enough process that I used for my character. So all I've done there is inputs, drop the subdivision axis down to 8, and again, really important, select the model, right click faces, and all I'm going to do is get rid of this back, sort of the cap here. And again, I just want to turn off image planes in the perspective view just so that it's going to help out a bit. Right, turn on wireframe unshaded in perspective view, and again, let's just get rid of that top cap as well. Don't particularly need that. Right, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to scale this down a little more to fit. Change the pivot point. Just position this up just about there, and we'll just scale it down to fit largely sort of the rough kind of shape of this arm. Think relatively cylindrical. Let's just line it up to this side view image. Make sure two-sided lighting's on as well. That'll be really helpful. And we'll just maybe try to intersect it a little bit. And what we want to do is we want to kind of line, or look on the side here of, we need to attach both surfaces. So a good way of doing this would be kind of just cutting a hole in, or getting rid of the faces that we don't need. Which might be a bit kind of aggressive, so we don't necessarily need them. So what we would do is maybe look to use the multi-cut tool. So kind of, let's just quickly grab that again. So just grab this arm. I'm just going to sort of roughly line them up, and then select this mesh and the multi-cut tool here. So you can get access to it from this little icon here. Mesh tools, multi-cut tool, or you can go into here, multi-cut tool. So range of ways that you can work with it. So we're looking, I like to use a technique called kind of nearest neighbor. So we're looking at where this vertex would attach there, we would then kind of create a little bit of a cut here. So let's just cut. I'm just going to hit return on that because we've created a vertex there now. And then we might then kind of cut along there as well. I'm going to change the flow of this mesh slightly because of this. And again, bearing in mind we're wanting to try to keep this quad, so I'm just going to hit delete on the keyboard to remove that. Toggle 1, 2 and 3, and you can see there you're getting a little bit of this weird kind of pinching, but that doesn't matter just yet, because what we're going to do is we're going to then merge that, both sort of separate components together. So hold V on the keyboard, snap. See that vertex had just snapped right there. Vertex, select this vertex in the torso, snap. And again, look at the flow of this. We might now have to then just go to edit mesh, delete edge vertex. So now, actually, just get rid of those two, edit mesh, delete edge vertex, and then we'll toggle that. So all we're doing is just snapping the vertex that lie on top of the other vertex. We're not merging the two pieces together just yet. We're just looking to kind of match them up a bit. And again, use this multi-cut tool, and let's kind of cut there. So hit return, or enter on the keyboard as the cool kids say. And we'll just snap this to there. And then we'll kind of hit G. Repeat last command, and we'll just create a cut here. So we're trying to create a cut to where this might be positioned, and again look through this shape here, and we can see we might need to add a vert there, and we might need to add a cut. You can cut anywhere on the face, and then kind of cut there. We might then need to reposition that up, and then we'll just kind of terminate that right the way across there. So grab this, snap to there. We're just realistically going to get rid of all of these faces internally. So what we're going to do now is, okay, yeah, it looks a bit horrific, but we're basically going to snap these different faces, just sorry, the different verts to the corresponding vertex of the arm. So we've you know, we've just kind of sort of stitched that together. Get a bit of a weird kind of issue there, so just snap that there. Okay, next thing that we'll do is select the mesh, because remember we moved a lot of things around in here to kind of, if we hit 3 you might see like a few little bits overlapping one another potentially. So toggle between 1, 2 and 3 and it'll show you any weird kind of pinching. You are getting a little bit of pinching there, and then if you go to edit mesh, merge, but in the checkbox, threshold 0001, always merge for 2 vertices, and what that's going to do is any vertices that are lay on top of one another, it's just going to merge them together. So that little pop there, it's basically sort of said there was a vertice on top of another vertice. I'm just going to merge it together and I'm going to cleanly mesh up, so it's kind of done that. That's happy days. Okay, so the next thing that we might look to do is, again, try to keep this all quads. Let's just cut that in there. So we've just had to create a little bit of a kind of tweak, and this might work quite nicely for like a shoulder blade shape. So yeah, we'll maybe just pull this down, pull that up a touch. You know, again, we'll look to get some more accurate reference when we start to model it a little more. We're just blocking it in for the time being. Right, so pretty happy with that. Right, okay, so the next trick, hit D on the keyboard to change pivot point, and now hold X. So we'll snap to grid. So it's snapped it to the world space origin. Really important, go to channel box and see here, because we just positioned this hand, arm, elbow piece, whatever, up here we've got all these different transforms and there's a little bit of history. So we'll just go to edit, delete by type history to remove the history. So it's getting rid of that first part. And then we'll just go to modify freeze transforms, and what that's going to do is it's going to zero out all the transforms, zero out the rotation, and set the scale to 1. And there's a really important reason why. And I want to keep going. So there's a really important reason why. And the reason why I wanted to zero all this out and set this back to 1 is because if I was to just hit Command D to duplicate and then type in -1, it's going to go crazy. We don't want that. We want to just keep things simple. So select the mesh, modify, freeze transforms, set everything, modify, make sure in the checkbox everything's set to freeze, rotate, the scale, the transform, freeze transforms. Let's just see what we'll get. Freeze transforms, there we go, zeroed out the transform, the rotation and the scale. Now if I hit Command D and flip in -1, there we go, it's kind of flipped that over there. So we've kind of got the start of the arms going in. So select all these little components, there we go, merge. So we've just combined them, and now again go to this merge tool and make sure that merge the threshold is set at 0.001, merge, and there we go. So we've got the start of this kind of being attached. Let's make sure that we're not getting any kind of weird. We are on that side, but less so on the other side. The other side seems okay, so let's just pull that there to there. So on the whole, that should be snapping up pretty good. Okay, and then just go to back into edit mesh, merge, and then we'll hit 3. We should be getting like a nice smooth uniform shape. The one thing that I would probably recommend us to do is we need to kind of tweak this flow of the mesh. So again, using the multi-cut tool, let's just cut, 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 cut around, cut around, cut around, cut around, and cut around and cut around. So we want to try to keep this all quads where we can, or there we go, just cut that there. And again, it's all about kind of looking at the mesh and kind of deciphering what's working, what's going to cause problems. So there we go. We want to keep this quads. What we might need to do is select both of these, edit mesh, merge to center, and it's just going to combine them. The next thing that we might need to do is the same with this. And okay, so we've got a triangle there, but it's not a huge problem. What we could do is just maybe pull this down a touch, and again, we don't want to break the flow of this mesh too much. Maybe we could just run a cut in here for cheapness. There we go, that'll do. And then just select this and create this little kind of rounded out a little bit. So we've still got this quad. It's a little bit cheap and a little bit dirty doing it that way, but you know what, that's fine. I can live with that. I mean, you could have changed the flow of the mesh if you really wanted to. In fact, let's do that. Let's just have a triangle there. By and large, it isn't going to make a monstrous difference. Okay, so we've got this largely, it's kind of quads, that's pretty decent. And again, we're just going to be looking at mapping in this sort of shape. So let's try to follow the contours of this a little. So we're just going to grab this. I'm just working from the front view at the moment. So, you know, you might just be grabbing odd little vertices here. And again, this is where it might get kind of hard to sort of see, like read you drawing almost. So that's why I lined things up a little bit before. So I could see that the sleeves would roughly be lining up. I mean, again, it's not the end of the world if they don't line up, but it's going to help when, you know, I want his sleeves to be like this because they're going to be quite baggy. He's wearing a big kind of rucksack kind of crazy coat type thing, I guess. Right, okay, so just scale this down a little bit. And sometimes when you're doing this, you edit, your pivot might go a little bit awry, so we might have to just kind of tweak that a little bit. It's because I've got symmetry mode turned on. But that's fine, I can live with that. Okay, so there you can see this is what I was saying, where we'll create, I want to work on just this one side. I'm not bothered about this side. We'll then look to create that asymmetry later on in the workflow. Okay, so mesh tools, insert edge loop. We'll go, so again, just kind of pull these up here. Let's just sort of tweak, and we're looking to try to refine this shape a little bit. Let's just have a little look in perspective view. You know, you might want to think about creating hinting a little bit at the muscle. I mean, I'm not too fussed at the minute because it's not the end of the world if you know, he doesn't have like muscles or anything like that. So right, so let's just snap that there. Again, like I say, rules are there to kind of be broken. I'm not too fussed about. Let's go back actually. So quads, I can live with that because what will happen when you come to export that, it's just going to triangulate the mesh anyway. Okay, so on the whole, that's not so bad. Double tap, and we'll just extrude this. See there, it's just kind of gone a bit. All I did there was hit W on the keyboard, and I'm just going to rotate it. Hit D, and we'll change the pivot point again, and we'll just rotate that. Again, we're just trying to fix this. Mesh tools and not whole. Insert edge loop, and we'll just look to add in a little bit of detail. Maybe just think about the creases a little bit. And the next thing that you might need to consider is how this is going to deform. So what I would then quickly do is, because I'm not really fussed about being able to see up the character's sleeves, so I would just then maybe fill the hole and then select the face and then extrude it, scale it in, and then just go edit mesh, merge to center, and it's just going to merge it all into the middle just like that. So again, get used to toggling between 1, 2 and 3. And what I'll do, mesh, insert edge loop, let's just add in another edge loop there. Okay, so let's just kind of, yeah, we might need to add in one more just down here, and that should be good. Maybe just pull this down a touch, and we'll maybe tweak this a little. So I'm just kind of blocking everything in at the moment. It's so this blocked in. Let's just have a look, because you kind of want to keep things relatively even, so you might need to slide, so hold C and then just slide the vert along the edge. So you can see there how we're just sliding that vertex along the edge. Hold C and we're just sliding it along, so we're trying to keep the spaces relatively uniform. And again, you might then need to just kind of pull this out. There we go. So little tweaks like that. So right, so that's not so bad. The next thing you might need to think about is how we might need this to flex. So this is where triangles might come in really useful. So we'll just cut in additional little loops here, because this is where his elbow is. So what we might need to do is kind of create a little bit of a seam almost, where that could have a little bit of flex just in here, so just affording us those few extra polys could be really useful. So you're not really going to see much of a difference, but when you start to deform it, if you put a joint in here and it bends, you'll be able to see a little bit of a subtle difference. And again, you could look to do something like that at the back as well, which could be quite useful. So there we go. So I'm fine with that. Again, it's just when it sort of, let's just kind of illustrate that a little bit on top of the mesh. So from underneath, let's just use the grease pencil, sketch on. So when this is kind of bending down here, these polys should then kind of retain that shape a little more, and they'll still stretch, but they should look to kind of hold that sort of volume a bit more. You might need to add in one more maybe, but I think on the whole that'd be fine, so I'll just get rid of that. Same with the top view as well, so it's kind of useful. So let's say that this is going to be flexing this way. And it's going to be bending like there. So having this, because if you think about it, this vert is, if you have a joint like here, and it's then up here, the joint, these are kind of going to crumple in, so you don't want to have this where it's crumpling in such an obvious way. You might be able to get away with just this sort of sitting over or near there, so you'll get this sort of shape, but ultimately it won't crumple in quite so much. So think about how you can add in those things. It's ultimately just to allow for that extra little bit of I guess flexibility. It'll be useful for that. So let's say if I was to, just for argument's sake, just go through the top camera just to illustrate it, just to try to show this. I've just grabbed this span of verts here, perspective. Okay, let's just hit D to change the pivot point, and then if I rotate it, okay, it's gonna crumple in, but it's very linear at the moment. But on the whole, when you come to paint the weights of your rig, you'll be able to soften that out because you've got a bit more flexibility. You might actually be more beneficial sort of stretching this out. So one way to do that would be to select the vert and then go edit mesh, average vertices, where we have average vertices, and it'll just sort of soften those verts. Double tap G, and it'll try to sort of soften them based on the selection around them. That's okay. And then, yeah, that might work. So we're just using that to sort of soften the shapes a little more. But I was just trying to think of where, you're going to add in these additional cuts to help your geometry flex. Okay, so the next part, let's just quickly do this. So we're going to look to, right, so this is maybe going to be the jacket. So we're going to look at this. This is going to be a little bit more like the next. See there how I'm just working one view at a time and kind of refining and working up one view one portion of it at a time. Okay, so maybe we might need to sort of soften that out a little, because that seems really harsh. Like he's good, poor bloke. Even I'm not that fat. Yeah, so let's just sort of soften that out. That's a bit better. It's not too kind of crazy. And yeah, that's okay. Okay, so face mode again, select the faces. This is basically going to be where we'll look to attach obviously the head. So what we'll do is we'll maybe, oh my, it goes crazy. So you might get sometimes you might get weird things like that. So all I'll do is select the faces. Yeah, I thought Maya is a very odd little creature. Okay, so what I generally do is flatten these out. You could isolate the selection. And remember, it's a neck. Necks aren't square. So because all I've done is extruded it, let's just maybe there we go. Weirdly, they were hidden. Why has that done that? Okay, just pull that up, pull that over here. Right here. Right. So that's, there we go. Pull that back a touch. Right, so that might be enough. Okay, so we very quickly kind of blocked that in. Obviously the neck isn't attaching there, so we might just need to rotate this. Just flatten that out a bit. And all I've done there is isolate the selection. So this is the neck, remember. And we'll just pull this forward a little, and we're going to pull this down, and we might need to then sort of, again, sort of position this sort of just like this. Let's have a look at the front view. Maybe we just need to scale this out a touch and pull this up a bit. Right, that'll do. Okay, so you can see there how we've gone from cylinder, we've blocked out that separate shape for the arm. Okay, there's still a few little areas that we need to tidy up, but we're getting there. Largely the whole mesh is quads, with the exception of odd little triangles here and there, which we can look to hide. You know, and change the flow of the mesh a little. So again, little things like cutting in like there. We could then try to think of the model as a little bit of a puzzle. So see there, we've got this flow there. Issue now is we've got this quad here, so we'll maybe then look to find a part of it that we can kind of hide that into. So it's get rid of that, keep cutting around, and again I'm gonna hide it very sneakily up there. That'll do. I can live with that. Whatever, that's fine. Okay, so one thing that I just want to do is get rid of that. Final thing on this video, what I really need to point out and make it really clear, Maya is a really buggy, temperamental piece of shit at the best of times. It's a great bit of software, but it's so flaky. I mean, I've not had any problems, but 9 times out of 10 it can kind of keel over on you when you least expect it to. And one of the things that causes a lot of problems is the history. So bear that in mind. Select the mesh, go to edit, delete by type, history, and get rid of that as frequently as you don't need it. Realistically, you won't really need the history until kind of when you start looking at rigging, things like that. You shouldn't really need the history. So just as a bit of a something to remember, start getting rid of your history, because you can lose work as a result of it. Okay, right, cool. I'll see you in the next video, and we'll continue this. We're probably going to start blocking in the head, and then we'll take it from there. Okay, bye bye.